Humans have this tendency to anthropomorphize, to believe that things are smart or human, right? Your brain is pre-wired to believe that that thing that you're interacting with, as if it was a person, is actually a person. There are several things that AI is doing specifically that fall into that trap. It's possible that the people that are currently running the AI wave hype, they know that this Eliza effect has existed for 30 years and people are going to be more inclined to think that the things are smarter.
What's up, guys? I'm Nobody Special, and welcome to part 2 of my 3-part interview series with Carl from Internet of Bugs. Now, in part 1, we talked about how AI startups and big tech have a long history of outright faking the demos of their AI products. And today, Carl's going to be talking to us about how our brains are actually pre-wired to projecting human qualities onto the machines that we interact with. He's also going to give us a little history lesson about seemingly amazing machines doing amazing things that turns out it was just a man behind the curtain pulling the levers. And he's going to talk about the much hyped disruption of the labor market that artificial intelligence is causing. But it turns out the disruption in the labor market that we're actually seeing is not the mass displacement that the AI startups have been promising us. It's actually a whole different mess entirely. Without further ado, here's Carl from Internet of Bugs. Now, also, from that same hype video that you did, there was also some very thought-provoking and very well-researched commentary about how gullible human beings are and how we are predisposed to believing that AI is going to be amazing. It's almost built into us, and this goes back decades. Now, there was two patterns or two terms that I had never heard of before that I started reading about after seeing your video. One was called dark patterns, and the other was the Eliza effect. And I think when we start to analyze how our own brains work and we realize how almost this predisposition is being preyed upon by these snake oil salesmen right now, could you talk a little bit about the dark patterns and the Eliza effect, what
Sure.
they are, maybe some of their history, and how it fits into this hype train that's running rampant?
So dark patterns is a user experience term that you've all experienced, but you don't necessarily know it. It's when you go to a page on a website and there's a big button that says, upgrade to paid version, right? And you click on that. And then once you get to the paid version, if you actually want to downgrade from the paid version to the other version, you have to click on this and then click on this and then fill out this form and then go here and then click this and then say, yes, I really want to, and then say, yes, I really want to. And it's like a 20-minute process to actually undo the subscription that it took you one click to make in the first place. Right, that's a dark pattern. It's when they intentionally make things harder for the user to get through the process. It's still possible, so they can't, the government theoretically won't get them in trouble, but it makes it a whole lot harder to do things. It's things when you buy a thing and then there's a checkbox that's auto-checked that says, buy one of these every month or subscribe, make this a recurring payment or those kind of things. Those are the original kind of dark patterns. Recently, people have started applying the term dark pattern to a lot of different things. Researchers look and go, oh, okay, so that's bad. That's falling into these psychological traps. And there are a lot of people, psychologists and ethicists, that have been studying how the human brain gets tricked by marketing and gets tricked by advertising and that kind of stuff for a long time. And it turns out that there are several things that AI is doing specifically that fall into that trap. One of them is the humans have this tendency to anthropomorphize, to believe that things are smart or human, right? The way that people think that their pets are really intelligent, or people name their cars, or they hit a bump too hard and they apologize to their car, or those kind of things, right? We tend, just as humans, to treat things that we interact with as if they have wants and desires and needs and that kind of thing, right? It's not unusual for us to use those kinds of words, even for things like saying, the weather wants to be hot or the wind wants to blow from the north or something, right? When wind can't actually want anything, but it's a convenient way for us to talk about patterns that happen with things. Well, what happens is when you take these AIs and you make them chatbots, and so you're interacting with it like it's a person, and you're going back and forth with it, your brain is pre-wired to believe that that thing that you're interacting with, as if it was a person, is actually a person, or effectively is a person. And the first time we really saw this, is what you call the Eliza effect, or we were talking about the Eliza effect. Eliza was a chat bot that was written, I want to say, in the 80s, like 30 years ago, something like that. I could look it up, but it was part of a editor called Emacs, and you could basically initialize this Eliza thing, and it would ask you, how are you feeling today? And you would say, I'm kind of sad. The weather is gray. And then it would basically take whatever sentence you gave it, and it would just rearrange words and stick patterns on there and say, why does gray weather make you feel sad? And you would go back and forth and back and forth. And what they found is that even when people knew that it was just a program that was moving words around, and if you tried, you could get it to spit out complete garbage, people would tell it their innermost secrets, and people would talk to it like it was actually a therapist, and people would, form almost relationships with it. And this is back in the days when there was no real long-term memory, right? So it wouldn't remember a conversation you had 2 days ago, or every conversation you started over from scratch, but people would still form relationships with this thing. And the guy that actually wrote Eliza, he wrote it kind of as a look what we can do if we move words around. This is kind of fun experiment. Actually spent some time trying to talk to people about how dangerous it was going to be as chatbots and AI stuff got better. And I don't think anybody ever listened to him. It's possible that the people that are currently running the AI wave hype are doing it as chatbots because it was easiest, and it's possible they're doing it as chatbots because they know that this Eliza effect has existed for 30 years, and people are going to be more inclined to think that the things are smarter. We don't know what's inside their head, but if they were going to be taking advantage of that effect, I don't think there's anything they would be doing different.
Now, this is where that recent GPT-4o and the voice demo really, all of these issues that you discussed, how demos are being used manipulatively, the dark patterns convincing people to act against their own interests using quirks in the software, and then our own predisposition. It's like hardwired into our brains to believe this software has human qualities when it doesn't. And then I went back and I rewatched that demo with Scarlett Johansson's voice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in a few minutes, I'm going to be interviewing at OpenAI. Have you heard of them?
OpenAI? Huh? Sounds vaguely familiar. Kidding, of course. That's incredible, Rocky. What kind of interview?
Well, it's for a software engineering role, but...
Oh, Rocky, that's quite a statement piece. I mean, you'll definitely stand out.
Which was stolen, by the way. They claim they used an actor who sounded exactly like her. The Supreme Court has heard cases like this in the past. That's not a defense that's going to hold up in court. Sam Altman asked Scarlett Johansson, who is one of the most desirable women on the planet, I think that's pretty universal, to use her voice, and she said no. And he used it anyway. And when he tweeted out the demo, he used one word when he tweeted out the demo, her, refers to the video or the movie with Scarlett Johansson, where all of these things, the dark patterns and the Eliza effect, were basically laid bare. So considering how these guys are such, if anything, they're more salesmen than they are visionaries or anything else, it's really easy to see a pattern of manipulative behavior here among these guys and what they're doing. And then to hear you and your research point to these examples going all the way back to the 1980s, showing, hey, this vulnerability has been there forever. This is nothing new and exciting. This is just old things with a modern twist. The technology has improved, obviously. But it's kind of scary when you realize all the different little tricks that they're pulling. And I think they really coalesced in that demo with Scarlett Johansson's voice.
Yeah, it really did. And they've co-opted a bunch of things. I mean, so Her is one example. Remember, Her was written by a bunch of professional screenwriters, right? There was no actual AI there. It was an actress reading lines that were created by what's probably a writer's room of, who knows how many people. But by intentionally tying the idea of their AI to this movie that a lot of people have seen, in which the AI responded far more, I mean, not only far more like a human, but like the ideal response, right? It's the Hollywood,
Giggling,
you know,
right?
the Hollywood ideal writer response, right? It's exactly that thing you always wish you could say, but you're not a Hollywood writer that has 3 weeks to edit this sentence. But the other thing that they've done that's kind of the same way is they've co-opted the phrase AI, right? So there's no, the idea of artificial intelligence is not, came from, you know, sci-fi, from, you know, decades and decades of sci-fi, right? And you've got Terminators and you've got all of these movies and books and stuff and Asimov's robot stuff that has been around, you know, it has totally saturated popular sci-fi culture since the 50s. And when they create this chatbot thing, they don't call it a chatbot. They don't call it a large language model, which it really is. They don't call it a transformers, which is the technology that's underneath that. They call it artificial intelligence. And what that does is that makes you think, oh, okay, this is an early version of all this stuff I've seen in movies for my entire life. And there's no evidence right now that that's actually the case, right? We don't know whether or not this is a stepping stone on the path to actual AI, or if this is just yet another of many dead ends that we've had, where we thought we were getting smarter, and then we got to a certain point. It's like, oh, okay, that's as smart as this thing can possibly get. We have other things we need to learn about the brain that we need to add to this in order to be able to get any further.
And on top of that, we're suckers for this stuff, right? I mean, it's built into our brains that we want to believe these machines are smarter than they are. We're almost genetically predisposed to it. And you spoke about this, you know, from almost centuries ago, the chess robot, right? Or
the mechanical Turk, right?
What was the story of the chess robot? I found that story pretty interesting. And then the name actually shows up in some of these fake demo stories too.
So I forget exactly when it was. It was, you know, before the 1700s, 1500, 1600, something like that. A guy made a thing he called the mechanical Turk, and it was basically a robot-looking thing in a turban in, I want to say, England, that would play chess. And so it would play chess against people, and everybody was amazed that this robot could play chess. And it turned out that there was a guy underneath the table with a bunch of levers that was actually moving the thing around, and he was actually playing chess against you, and it just looked like the robot was, or in behind it, or I forget. I don't know exactly how the mechanism worked, but basically it was an actual person that was playing chess that was just making the robot move the way it was trying to move. That name, Mechanical Turk, became a product by Amazon, where a business could hire people to behind the scenes do things like classify pictures. So like you'd give them 100 pictures and they would say, okay, that's a rabbit, that's a dog, that's a duck, that's a whatever. And they'd get paid, you know, 1 cent for every 10 pictures that I'm making up numbers, but they get paid a pittance for doing this. And it was all people, you know, in the third world, where that was like, is, you know, the height of what they could make from a salary standpoint. And then a whole bunch of, I mean, just some awful stuff that nobody here wants to do. Like, you know, here's, you know, 10,000 pictures that got posted to Facebook in the last hour. Go through and find which of those are child pornography and which one of those are, you know, snuff pictures, right? I mean, those kinds of things. So Mechanical Turk was this platform where you could outsource repetitive, really annoying things to people. It's where we got like the CAPTCHA stuff. Those kinds of things. And then that kind of mechanism became very popular in the whole AI space. So there was a thing not long ago where Amazon had these stores where theoretically what you would do is you would scan your palm or your phone as you walked in the store. They don't have one in Austin where I live, so I haven't actually been in one. I've just seen videos of it. And you walk up and you grab whatever you want and you put it in your basket and you walk out, and it just sends you a bill for that. Well, it turns out that they started off having some humans watching over video cameras to supervise the AI. And then it came out that actually the humans were doing 70% of the work and the AI never actually got good enough. And then Amazon shut the whole product down. But this whole time they were saying the AI is keeping track of everything that you pick up, right? So everybody had this idea that the AIs were good enough to be able to do that, when it turns out it was a bunch of people that were looking through a bunch of cameras on the ceiling.
So, and this the irony here, and they're almost trolling us with this.
Mm-hmm.
They're telling us it's this AI store, and the algorithm is watching you and billing you correctly, when really it's people reviewing the video and manually going through watching you. And the department, the program that is running this, is named the Mechanical Turk, which is named after this famous illusion of an intelligent robot that used to play chess, when really it was just a person pulling the strings. I mean, they're just trolling us right here.
Yeah.
Aren't they insulting our intelligence with this almost? It's pretty wild, that story. And I had never heard of the Mechanical Turk before. I saw that in one of your videos, and it was another one of those just wow moments. I mean, I've suspected these kind of things had been going on, but I could never really prove it.
AI has become the thing that you tell people if you want your stock to go up at the end of the quarter. I mean, Inuit, right? Just had we're laying off, 18% of our people or something like that, 11% of our people, and we're going to replace them with AI. So, I mean,
Yep.
Already announcing layoffs was going to make your stock bump. Now you can say, I'm replacing people and I'm using AI, and then your stock gets a double bump. It's crazy.
Yeah, the market loves layoffs, and the market at least used to love AI. It's not you can't AI wash as easily anymore. The market is starting to demand a little more substance. But yeah, I did catch that article. I was talking about that on one of my live streams about Intuit, and saying those AI hires, I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're never going to happen. The bubble will be burst by then, I think.
Yeah, well, we had a thing kind of like this in the early 2000s, where people were outsourcing jobs from the US to India, right? And we were told, don't be a programmer anymore, don't be a software person anymore, don't be an IT person anymore, because all those jobs are going to India. And for a year or two, the hiring in the US for IT stuff was down. And then it turned out that the jobs in India and Czechoslovakia and wherever, they didn't do as good a job because of communication problems, because of time zone problems, because of who knows. And so a bunch of us got hired back in to clean up the mess that happened when they outsourced everything, offshored everything. So, it wouldn't surprise me if for the next year or two or three, you've got these managers who believe that AI is going to solve everything, and they choose not to hire people, or they choose to lay off people because they don't think those people are going to be needed. And then they have the AI. BP just had a thing where they said they were using, I think it was 70% fewer programmers than they had the previous year. I think they were all contractors. But the question is basically, is the software that those things generate going to be as good as the ones that the people generated? And chances are, my guess is, that it's going to be crappy software, and they're going to try to run it. They're going to run into problems because they have enough trouble running software that people actually wrote. And then they're going to have to bring in a bunch of people to clean up the stuff that the AI did a crappy job of. But unfortunately, in the few years between those two, there's the job market for software folks is soft, which is really unfortunate, because there are a lot of people that are getting caught in the crossfire of the hype.
And that was very thought-provoking, your take on AI and its impact on the job market, because there's plenty of puff pieces out there about how we need universal basic income because we're all going to be put out of work tomorrow by AI. I mean, there's some of these CEOs are saying 80% of the workforce is now unnecessary. I mean, just completely divorced from reality statements. But I remember, again, it was another one of those moments where I just wanted to applaud when you mentioned how, we have these imbecile middle managers who have advanced probably further than they should have, because they say the right things at meeting, not because they're capable producers. And, they're going to go to some meeting and they're going to say, we're going to lay off the whole programming department and make it AI. They have no idea how to make that work. But some executive is going to say, that's a great idea, Johnson. They're going to fire all the programmers. And then the company is going to go to hell in a handbasket because it's going to make a mess, right?
Yeah, and it's all because they read it in CIO magazine.
Wow. Now, there was another aspect of jobs, again, that you thought maybe some jobs might be at risk via a different mechanism.
So the other problem, I've got a video about this, but the other problem with AI and jobs, and this is particularly bad for software folks, but it's actually bad for everybody, is there's a new generation of AI job applier apps. So you go to a site, you upload your resume, you give it some keywords, and then it scans for the job boards. It sees, oh, this position just got posted. It adds the keywords from that job posting onto your resume. It writes a ChatGPT-4 cover letter for you, and it submits it on your behalf. And so you end up with this thing where this job gets posted. It has been online for an hour, and it's got 500 applications already. And none of the 500 people that actually applied to it have any idea that they actually applied to it. And so if a real person actually wants to get in and try to apply for that job, they're swamped in all of this AI-generated garbage. And the other thing that's really sad is most companies now, and the more resumes they get, the more likely they are to do this, use AI bots to screen resumes and make sure they have all the right keywords and they have all the right cover letters and all that kind of stuff. And then the AI will rank the people that applied. And it turns out that what I've read, at least, I can't actually do this experiment, but what I've read is that the bots that auto apply for the jobs train themselves on the software that you can buy that screens resumes. And so it's a lot better at making cover letters and making resumes that pass through the screen of the AI screener bot. So it's even harder for a real person to actually get their resume in front of a real person these days.
So if you're a hiring manager, you're being bombarded with what? Outright fake applicants? Or are they just unqualified applicants who had AI make their resume?
They may or may not be qualified. They're not necessarily interested in the position that they're applying for. The resumes have been, and the cover letters have been massaged by an AI to better match the job description that you put out. And so everybody looks like a perfect match for the job. Even the people that only used that technology once 10 years ago, or some of them might not have ever used it at all, and the AI just added it. They all have these really good sounding cover letters about why it's very important to them to work for your company when they've never actually heard of your company. ChatGPT-4 just filled out all of that crap in the cover letter. And so it's really, really hard when you're sitting looking at all these, it looks like a folder full of perfect applicants. And it turns out that it's all just AI generated garbage. You call these people and they're like, oh, who are you? I applied for your job. What? And so it makes it really hard for real people to actually get in front of hiring managers or make connections these days.
So it doesn't really sound like the big giant leap forward in human productivity that we're being promised. It sounds like it's making a mess more than anything.
It's making a lot of money for the AI companies that screen resumes and the AI companies that auto post resumes. But aside from that, they're just rent seeking. I mean, they're just extracting money from the industry to make things just as bad as they used to be.
So it turns out we're all naturally gullible and prone to believing that AI is more capable than it really is. That psychological phenomenon that makes you name your car or project human qualities onto pets also makes you more vulnerable to the marketing and the hype cycle surrounding artificial intelligence. And it turns out Amazon is even trolling us with this gullibility by even naming one of their products the Mechanical Turk. And as to all this hoopla about how AI is going to displace 80% of the jobs out there, turns out so far all it's really done is made a hiring manager's life miserable by bombarding his inbox with spam AI-generated applications and resumes. Folks, that was just part 2 of my interview with Carl from Internet of Bugs. I'm going to put links to the other parts down below. I highly recommend you check those out. And of course, keep an eye out for part 3 in the days ahead. And until next time, live small and dream big.